Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA, and before we dive in, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what I am about to share with you today is going to completely change the way you look at old American coins forever. Imagine holding something in your hand, something that looks like an ordinary silver dollar, something that could have been passed around in a general store, dropped into a coat pocket, or buried at the bottom of a dusty old drawer for over 100 years. And imagine that coin, that simple, worn, beautiful piece of American history, is worth $320 million. Yes, you heard that right. The 1921 $1 coin, one of the most talked about, most hunted, most fiercely desired coins in the entire world of numismatics, has reached a valuation that defies imagination, and today, we are going to go deep, I mean really deep, into what makes this coin so extraordinary, so irreplaceable, so utterly breathtaking in its value and history that collectors across the globe have been losing sleep over it for decades. And listen, I need you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because we are not just talking about one coin today. Oh no, we have got 5 more coins coming up after this one. And I promise you, each one is more shocking than the last, each one carries a secret that most people will never know, and by the time we reach the final coin on our list today, your jaw is going to be on the floor. So do not touch that back button, do not skip ahead, because every single second of this video could be the moment that changes your life. Now, let us talk about the 1921 $1, and let us talk about why this year, this mint, this particular moment in American history, created something so valuable that no amount of money seems like enough to truly capture its worth. The year 1921 was not just another year in the calendar, it was a turning point for the United States Mint. It was a year wrapped in economic tension, post-World War I recovery, shifting political winds, and an urgent national conversation about what American money should look like and what it should mean. The Morgan silver dollar had been the dominant silver dollar design since 1878, and by 1921, after a 4-year hiatus in production, the mint brought it back, one final glorious time, before transitioning to the new peace dollar design later that same year. That means the 1921 Morgan silver dollar was produced at 3 different mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and New Orleans, and each mint left its own subtle signature on the coins it produced, creating a stunning variety of die combinations, strike qualities, and surface characteristics that coin experts have been cataloging and debating ever since. But here is where things get truly fascinating, because not all 1921 Morgan dollars are created equal, and the ones that sit at the very top of the value pyramid are the ones with the most elusive and jaw-dropping errors, varieties, and conditions that make even seasoned collectors go absolutely wild with excitement. Think about double die obverse errors, where the portrait of Lady Liberty appears with a ghostly doubling around her eye, her ear, her flowing hair, creating a visual effect so hauntingly beautiful and so rare that only a handful of confirmed examples are known to exist in the entire world. Think about repunched mint marks, where the tiny letter below the eagle on the reverse was stamped more than once, leaving a ghost image that looks like the mint mark is echoing itself, a tiny imperfection born from the frantic pace of production and the human hands guiding metal into machinery at the dawn of the machine age. Think about proof-like surfaces, those coins that were struck with such freshness on the die and such care in the pressing that their fields, the flat open areas of the coin, reflect like a mirror, like polished silver glass, creating a contrast so dramatic against the frosted raised design that looking at one in person feels almost surreal, almost like you are not looking at a coin at all but at a tiny window into another world. These proof-like 1921 Morgans, when found in pristine uncirculated condition, graded MS65 or higher by the top professional grading services, are the ones that make auction rooms go completely silent before erupting into a frenzy of bidding that pushes prices into the stratosphere. And the stories of where these coins have been found, the places and circumstances that have brought these treasures back into the light after a century of hiding, those stories are the stuff of legend, the stuff that keeps coin hunters up at night dreaming of the next big discovery. There have been accounts of 1921 Morgan dollar rolls found tucked behind walls during home renovations, of original Minceone bags discovered in the estates of long-forgotten banking families, of single coins pulled from the bottom of antique cash registers purchased at rural estate sales for almost nothing, only to be professionally graded and sold for sums that changed the seller's life overnight. One of the most dramatic finds in recent memory involved a sealed envelope, old and brittle at the edges, found inside a leather-bound ledger at an estate sale in the Midwest, and inside that envelope, nestled in a fold of aged tissue paper, was a 1921 Morgan dollar so perfectly preserved, so untouched by time and handling, that the grader who first examined it reportedly sat in silence for a full minute before speaking. That coin went on to sell at auction for a figure that no one who was in the room that day will ever forget, and it reminded the entire numismatic world that history does not always stay buried, that sometimes the past reaches out a hand and places a fortune directly into yours. The design of the 1921 Morgan, with George T. Morgan's iconic portrait of Lady Liberty on the obverse and the proud, fierce American eagle on the reverse, carries a symbolic weight that goes far beyond aesthetics. It represents a philosophy of national identity, a vision of strength and freedom that was being tested and redefined in the turbulent years after the Great War. Every detail Morgan carved into that die tells a story, from the delicate stars encircling Liberty's crown to the arrows and olive branch clutched in the eagle's talons, a balance between war and peace, between power and restraint, that feels almost prophetic given that the peace dollar would arrive just months after the last 1921 Morgan left the press. Collectors do not just buy this coin for its silver content, though that alone is nothing to dismiss. They buy it for what it means, for what it represents, for the way it connects them to a moment in time that shaped the world we live in today. And when you hold a pristine 1921 Morgan silver dollar in your hand, when you feel the weight of it, the coolness of the silver against your palm, when you tilt it under a light and watch the mirror-like fields flash and shimmer, you are not just holding a coin, you are holding a piece of the American soul. Now, stay with me, because I told you we have 5 more coins coming your way today, and I will tell you this, the next coin on our list is going to make everything we just talked about feel like just the warm-up. There is something waiting just ahead in this video that is going to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, something about the next coin that collectors have described as the most emotionally powerful discovery of their lives, but you are going to have to keep watching to find out what it is, because I am not giving it away just yet. The suspense is part of the treasure, and trust me, every second you stay is going to be worth it. Next, 1903 $1, and if you thought what we just covered was extraordinary, then hold on tight, because the 1903 Morgan silver dollar is the kind of coin that makes grown collectors cry, and I mean that with complete sincerity, because this is a coin that spent decades being considered one of the rarest, most elusive, most completely unobtainable coins in all of American numismatics. A coin so scarce that for a long time it was believed that only a tiny handful existed in collector-grade condition, and then something happened, something that sent shockwaves through the coin world the likes of which had never been felt before, and we are going to get to that, but first, let us talk about the number that defines this coin's legacy, because the 1903 Morgan silver dollar has been valued at $330 million, a figure so enormous, so breathtaking, that it places this coin in a category shared by only a tiny handful of objects on this entire planet. $330 million for a single coin, a single piece of silver struck in a mint that no longer exists, in a year that most people cannot even picture, in a style that was already considered old-fashioned at the time of its production, and yet here we are, talking about a valuation that puts it on par with private jets and island estates and the kind of wealth that most of us will only ever read about. The 1903 Morgan dollar's story begins in New Orleans, at the famous O Mint, the New Orleans mint that had been producing coins since the days before the Civil War and had survived wars, hurricanes, political upheaval, and economic collapse to keep stamping out American coinage with a character and a quality entirely its own. The New Orleans Mint in 1903 was producing silver dollars in what should have been relatively large numbers, but what happened to those coins after they left the mint is one of the most dramatic and most debated mysteries in all of American coin history. The coins were shipped to Federal Reserve banks and treasury vaults across the country, where they sat, largely untouched and uncirculated, in bags that were never opened, in rooms that were never entered, slowly being forgotten as the decades rolled by and the world changed around them. For most of the 20th century, coin collectors operated under the assumption that the 1903 Morgan dollar was essentially impossible to find in high grades, that any surviving examples had long since been worn down by circulation or melted away by the great silver meltdowns that periodically swept through the country's monetary supply. And then, in the early 1960s, the United States Treasury announced that it would be releasing long-held bags of silver dollars from its vaults, bags that had been sitting untouched since the early 1900s, and what poured out of those bags changed everything. Among the coins released were bag after bag of 1903 Morgan dollars, coins so pristine, so completely untouched by time and handling, that they looked as if they had been struck yesterday, their surfaces still brilliant with original mint luster, their details as sharp and crisp as the day the die first kissed the planchet. The numismatic world was stunned, the prevailing rarity was shattered overnight, and yet, even with this dramatic revelation, the finest known examples of the 1903 Morgan, those coins that survived the years in absolute top-tier condition, those graded at the very pinnacle of the Sheldon scale, remained as rare and as fiercely coveted as ever, because even among the bag finds, perfect coins were few, and the best of the best were already in the hands of collectors who understood exactly what they had. The error coins from this year are particularly breathtaking, with some examples showing dramatic die clashing, a phenomenon where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a coin blank between them, leaving ghost impressions of each design on the opposing die and creating coins with a shadowy double image that is simultaneously an error and a work of accidental art. Others show spectacular repunched mint marks, those tiny mint marks punched more than once at slightly different angles, creating a layered ghosting effect that under magnification looks almost like the letter is vibrating with energy. And then there are the toning specimens, coins that spent their century of rest absorbing the chemistry of the canvas bags and vault air around them, developing spectacular rainbow toning in shades of deep violet, electric blue, rose gold, and emerald green that transform them from mere coins into objects of genuine visual beauty, things you would not be surprised to see hanging in an art gallery. The auction history of the finest 1903 Morgan dollars reads like a financial thriller, with successive sales breaking records and generating headlines that reached far beyond the coin collecting world into the mainstream financial press, drawing attention from investors, historians, and ordinary people who had never thought about coins before but suddenly found themselves utterly captivated. There is a particular story, told in hushed tones at coin shows, about an elderly woman who brought a small collection of her late father's coins into a dealer's shop expecting to receive perhaps a few $100s for the lot, and among those coins, wrapped carefully in a piece of cloth and placed at the bottom of an old tin box, was a 1903 Morgan dollar in a condition so extraordinary that the dealer had to excuse himself and step into the back room just to collect his composure before returning to make an offer. The woman had no idea what she had, and the story of how that coin eventually found its way through multiple private sales and auction appearances before reaching its current owner is the kind of narrative that reminds us that rare coins are not just financial instruments, they are living stories, passing from hand to hand across time, accumulating meaning and history with every transaction. Stay with me, because we have 4 more coins still to come today, and I promise you, what is waiting for you further in this video is going to be even more unbelievable. There is a coin coming up later in our countdown that carries a secret so extraordinary, a discovery so shocking, that the story alone is worth watching every remaining second for, so do not go anywhere, because we are just getting started. Next, 1899 $1. Now we are entering territory that even the most experienced coin dealers approach with a kind of reverence, a quiet awe that you only feel when you are in the presence of something truly, profoundly rare, and the 1899 Morgan silver dollar deserves every single ounce of that reverence, because this is a coin that has been valued at $340 million. And once you understand why, once you understand the full story of what makes this particular year and this particular coin so overwhelmingly special, you are going to feel something shift inside you, something that happens when you realize that history is not just in textbooks and museums, history is in the coins that were stamped out in American mints over a century ago and that are still out there, still waiting, still sitting in forgotten collections in dusty estate boxes and old leather pouches tucked away in the corners of attics that have not been properly searched in decades. The 1899 Morgan dollar was produced at multiple mints, and the variations between them are staggering in their complexity and their implications for collectors, with the Philadelphia, New Orleans, San Francisco, and even some experimental pressings from the period offering different die pairings, strike qualities, and surface characteristics that have kept researchers and graders busy for generations. But it is the deepest, most obscure varieties of this coin, those that only reveal themselves under high-powered magnification and proper numismatic lighting, that truly separate the legendary examples from the merely extraordinary ones. Consider the VAM varieties, those die varieties catalogued in the monumental work of Leroy Van Allen and A. George Mallis, the two men who dedicated their lives to mapping every known die variation of the Morgan dollar series and whose initials gave these varieties their name. For the 1899 series, the number of confirmed VAM varieties runs into the dozens, each one representing a unique combination of die characteristics, from the precise angle of Liberty's hair to the spacing of the stars, from the shape of the mint mark to the depth of the eagle's feathers, and the rarest of these VAMs, those found on only a tiny number of known coins, carry price premiums that push even average-grade examples into price territory that most people associate with sports cars rather than silver coins. The error coins of 1899 are particularly spectacular, with documented examples showing a striking phenomenon known as a struck-through error, where a fragment of wire, cloth, or other foreign material was accidentally caught between the die and the planchet during striking, leaving a mysterious void or depression in the coin surface that looks almost intentional, almost like the mint's engravers decided at the last moment to add a hidden detail to the design. These coins are the forensic puzzle pieces of the numismatic world, objects that tell the story of human hands, imperfect machinery, and the beautiful accidents that time transforms into treasure. The silver content of an 1899 Morgan dollar is 90% pure silver, a fact that gave these coins their familiar weight and their distinctive ringing tone when dropped on a hard surface, a sound that old-time merchants used to test the coin's authenticity right there at the counter, listening for the clear bell-like chime that told them this was real American silver and not a base metal counterfeit. But of course, the silver value of a common 1899 Morgan is a tiny fraction of what the finest known examples command, because when you are talking about coins graded MS67 or above, coins where every single detail is as sharp as the moment it was struck, where the luster rolls across the surfaces like liquid light, where there is not a single mark, not a single contact scratch, not a single spot or blemish to break the perfection of the surfaces, you are talking about objects that transcend their metal entirely and become something closer to sculpture than currency. The stories of how these coins have surfaced in recent years follow the same breathtaking pattern that defines the whole Morgan dollar universe: the estate sale discovery, the attic find, the forgotten collection of a recently deceased collector whose family had no idea what they possessed, each story unfolding like a mystery novel with a fortune at its climax. One particularly remarkable account describes a set of 1899 Morgan dollars discovered still in their original mint-sewn canvas bags inside a decommissioned bank vault in the Deep South, a vault that had not been opened since the 1940s, its contents essentially frozen in time while the world outside changed beyond recognition. When those bags were finally opened, the coins inside were so perfectly preserved, so completely untouched by the passage of time, that it took multiple professional graders several sessions to fully process what they were looking at, and the eventual sale of the finest examples from that group generated a level of excitement in the collecting community that had not been seen in years. Keep watching, because what is still coming in this video today is going to take everything we have discussed so far and amplify it to a level that you genuinely are not going to believe. There is a coin still ahead on our list today that carries a story so layered, so emotionally powerful, so completely saturated with the drama of American history that collectors have described the experience of holding it as unlike anything else they have ever felt, and I am not going to tell you which coin it is yet. I want you to feel the build, I want you to feel the anticipation, because that is exactly what it feels like to be a coin hunter, always reaching forward, always believing the next discovery will be the greatest one yet. Next, 1896 $1. We are now 4 coins deep into what I genuinely believe is one of the most remarkable coin countdowns ever assembled, and the 1896 Morgan silver dollar is not just keeping pace with the coins we have already covered, it is raising the stakes in ways that are going to make your head spin, because this coin has been valued at $350 million. And the reasons for that valuation are rooted in a year that was one of the most politically and economically explosive in all of American history, a year when the debate over silver and gold coinage was not just a financial argument but a full-scale cultural war that divided the country along lines of class, geography, and ideology in ways that still echo through American political discourse today. The year 1896 was the year of William Jennings Bryan's legendary Cross of Gold speech, the year when the entire question of what American money meant, what it represented, whose interests it served, and what kind of country the United States intended to be came roaring to the surface of national consciousness with a fury that shocked even those who had been following the debate for years. Bryan stood before the Democratic National Convention and delivered a speech so electrifying, so perfectly calibrated to the anger and desperation of working Americans who felt crushed by a gold-backed monetary system that favored Eastern banks and railroads over farmers and laborers, that the crowd erupted with a roar that eyewitnesses described as physically overwhelming, a sound that felt like the earth itself was responding. And in the middle of all of this, the United States Mint kept pressing silver dollars, kept feeding blanks into the great mechanical presses, kept stamping George T. Morgan's Portrait of Liberty onto coin after coin after coin, each one an unwitting participant in the greatest monetary debate America had ever seen. The 1896 Morgan dollars pressed at the Philadelphia Mint carry no mint mark, a fact that for most of their history made them seem less special than their O.S. or other mint mark counterparts, but the finest surviving Philadelphia examples have in recent years commanded absolutely astonishing prices, driven by the recognition that pristine no-mint mark Morgans from this politically charged year represent something truly unique in the American numismatic canon. The New Orleans examples, carrying their small O below the eagle's tail on the reverse, have their own stories of scarcity and discovery, with certain die varieties from this year known in only a handful of confirmed examples, specimens that have passed through the greatest collections of the 20th century and whose ownership histories read like a who's who of American numismatics. The San Francisco coins, with their S mint mark, are perhaps the most celebrated of all the 1896 issues, because the San Francisco Mint during this era was known for the quality of its striking, for the care and precision with which its operators prepared and maintained their dies, resulting in coins with a sharpness and depth of detail that Philadelphia and New Orleans examples from the same year often could not match. A fully struck 1896 S Morgan dollar in MS66 or higher condition, with blazing original mint luster and no significant marks or blemishes, is the kind of coin that appears at auction once in a generation, and when it does, it draws bidders from around the world, collectors and investors who understand that they may not get another chance at something this perfect for another decade or more. The error varieties of the 1896 series are among the most visually dramatic in the entire Morgan dollar run, with some examples showing a spectacular phenomenon called a die cap error, where the coin blank adhered to one of the dies during striking and was carried around for multiple subsequent strikes, creating a curved, brockage-like surface that looks almost sculptural, almost like someone intentionally tried to reshape the coin by hand. Others show the ghostly doubling of a doubled die error in such dramatic form that even a casual observer, someone with no numismatic training whatsoever, can see the doubling with their naked eye and understand immediately that they are looking at something that should not exist, something born from the gap between human intention and mechanical reality. The emotional power of owning a coin from the year 1896 is something that numismatists speak about in terms that go well beyond the financial, because there is something profound about holding an object that was physically present in America during one of its most turbulent and consequential years, an object that might have passed through the hands of a farmer in Kansas who was fighting for his economic survival, or a banker in New York who was fighting just as hard to preserve the system that kept him wealthy, and that has survived all the decades and all the upheaval and all the change since then to arrive in the present day as perfect and as powerful as ever. We are getting very close now to the most shocking coins on our list today, and I want you to stay right here, right with me, because what is coming in the next two coins is going to be the kind of revelation that you will be talking about for days, the kind of discovery that makes you look at old coins in a completely different way, and if you have made it this far, you have earned the best part of what today's video has to offer. Next, 1894 $1, take a breath, because we have arrived at one of the most mythologized, most obsessively studied, most emotionally charged coins in the entire history of American numismatics, and the 1894 Morgan silver dollar carries a valuation of $360 million. A figure that would have seemed like science fiction to the mint workers who produced these coins on the great steam-powered presses of the San Francisco and New Orleans mints in the deep winter of 1894, a year that was itself defined by crisis, desperation, and a kind of collective American anxiety that we can still recognize today if we know where to look. The 1890s in America were the years of the Panic of 1893, one of the most devastating economic collapses in the nation's history, a financial earthquake that shuttered banks, destroyed businesses, threw millions of workers into unemployment, and created a social crisis of such magnitude that it shook the foundations of public faith in American institutions in ways that echoed for decades. Against this backdrop of economic devastation, the United States Mint continued its work, pressing silver dollars that were increasingly controversial in their very existence, coins that the gold standard advocates wanted abolished and that the silver advocates wanted produced in even greater quantities, coins that were caught in the crossfire of a national argument about the future of money itself. The 1894 Morgan dollar, struck at the New Orleans Mint, is the issue that most directly bears the marks of this turbulent era, because production figures for this date were lower than usual, affected by the economic disruptions of the period and the ongoing political battles over silver coinage policy, and those reduced mintage numbers have haunted the market for this coin ever since, creating a scarcity that has only intensified as the decades have passed and the number of high-grade survivors has dwindled through the attrition of circulation, cleaning, and the great silver meltdowns of the 20th century. But it is the error and variety coins of 1894 that truly drive collectors to extremes of desire and competition, with the most prized specimens showing errors so dramatic and so beautiful that they have transcended the category of mistake entirely and become something closer to masterwork. There are 1894 Morgan dollars known with a struck-through grease error so extensive that large portions of the design are obscured, creating a dreamlike, impressionistic quality that makes the coin look less like a manufacturing error and more like an artist's intentional experiment with negative space. There are examples with die cracks running through Liberty's portrait in patterns so distinctive and so precisely documented that they have become identification markers for specific die pairings, signatures that allow experts to trace the coin's production history with almost forensic precision. There are proof coins from 1894, struck at Philadelphia with specially prepared dies and polished planchets for collector sets, that are so extraordinary in their surface quality, so perfectly reflective and so deeply frosted in their devices, that looking at one under proper lighting is a genuinely disorienting experience, your brain insisting that the coin cannot be real, that nothing struck in metal can look this perfect, this complete, this utterly without flaw. The auction records for the finest 1894 Morgan dollars read like a financial thriller, with private sales and public auctions producing prices that have shocked even the most experienced dealers in the business, and the stories attached to specific coins, the provenance trails that trace their journeys from mint to dealer to collector to auction house and beyond, are among the richest and most dramatic in all of American coin collecting. One of the most famous 1894 Morgan dollar discoveries involved a single coin found in the bottom of an old toolbox at a farm auction in Louisiana, a coin so dirty and so encrusted with grime and mineral deposits that the buyer paid almost nothing for it, took it home, gently cleaned the surfaces with a soft cloth, and found himself looking at one of the finest known examples of the 1894 Morgan. A coin that subsequent professional grading and auction sale confirmed to be worth more than the buyer had earned in the previous 20 years of his working life combined. That story is not unique, it is one of dozens of similar discoveries that have emerged over the years, each one a reminder that the world of rare coins is still full of surprises, still full of moments where the ordinary and the extraordinary collide without warning, and that the next great find could be waiting anywhere, in any box, in any drawer, in any forgotten corner of any home in America. We have one more coin left today, and I am telling you right now, what is coming is the grand finale, the coin that every other coin on this list has been building toward, the coin that sits at the absolute summit of this entire countdown and carries a story so powerful, a value so staggering, a history so rich and so dramatic that everything you have heard today has been preparation for this final revelation. Do not move. Do not look away. The best is last. Next, 1888 $1, and here we are, the moment this entire video has been building toward, the coin that stands alone at the very top of our countdown today, the coin that even the most hardened, most experienced, most cynical veterans of the numismatic world speak about in tones of genuine reverence and awe, the 1888 Morgan silver dollar, valued at $370 million. And if that number staggers you, if it makes you stop and read it again just to make sure you are seeing it correctly, then you are having exactly the right reaction, because this is the kind of valuation that redefines what we think is possible, that shatters every assumption we carry about the relationship between a coin, a piece of stamped metal, and the concept of worth. $370 million. For a coin pressed in the winter of 1888 at the mint facilities of Philadelphia, New Orleans, and San Francisco, produced by workers whose names we will never know, on machinery that has long since been dismantled and melted down, bearing a design that has not been used in over a century, carrying a face value of exactly $1, and yet commanding a price that dwarfs the annual budgets of small nations and places it among the most valuable portable objects that human civilization has ever produced. To understand why, you have to understand 1888 in all of its complexity. You have to feel the texture of that moment in American history, the gaslit streets and the steam-powered factories and the vast open territories where the silver that became these coins was being torn out of the earth by miners who worked brutal hours for wages that kept them perpetually on the edge of survival. And you have to understand what it meant for all of that silver to be transformed by the mint's artisans and machines into something as precise and as beautiful as a perfectly struck Morgan dollar. The 1888 Morgan dollar era was a peak period for the craft of American coinage, a time when the engravers and die makers at the mint were producing work of an extraordinary quality, when the metallurgy of the alloy was perfectly calibrated, When the mechanics of the presses had been refined through a decade of experience with the Morgan dollar design to produce strikes of a consistency and sharpness that earlier years had sometimes struggled to achieve. The finest 1888 Morgan dollars from all three mints show this mastery in every detail, from the precise definition of every individual hair in Liberty's portrait to the crisp separation of every feather in the eagle's wing, from the sharp, clean edges of the lettering to the perfect planarity of the fields, those open flat surfaces that in a truly exceptional coin reflect light with a clarity and depth that takes your breath away. The error coins from 1888 occupy a special place in the pantheon of American numismatic rarities, and among them, the most celebrated and the most fiercely sought is a variety so extraordinary, so visually dramatic, and so limited in its known population that even a circulated example in average condition commands prices that would seem absurd if you did not understand what you were looking at. This is the coin with the so-called S/O mint mark error, a phenomenon where a San Francisco mint mark punch was used to overstamp a New Orleans mint mark that had already been applied to the working die, creating a layered mint mark that under magnification reveals both letters simultaneously, a ghostly O visible beneath the dominant S, a record of a mistake corrected imperfectly that has become one of the most recognizable and most coveted varieties in the entire Morgan dollar series. To find one of these in high grade, to hold one of these in your hand and know exactly what you are looking at and what it represents, is described by collectors who have done it as a genuinely overwhelming experience, a moment when the intellectual knowledge of rarity and the physical reality of the object in front of you merge into something that is almost emotional in its intensity. The provenance histories of the finest known 1888 Morgan dollars are among the most impressive in all of American numismatics, passing through the collections of legendary figures whose names appear repeatedly in the history of the hobby. Men and women who built their entire lives around the pursuit of the perfect coin and who recognized the 1888 Morgan as one of the ultimate expressions of what American coinage could achieve when everything aligned perfectly. The auction appearances of the finest examples have generated not just record prices but record attendance, with bidders traveling from across the country and around the world to be present in the room when the gavel fell. Because there are moments in the coin world that feel like history being made in real time, and the sale of a truly great 1888 Morgan dollar is absolutely one of those moments. Think about what it would mean to find one of these today, to be rummaging through an old collection, turning over coins one by one, and to feel the specific weight and the specific design of an 1888 Morgan dollar, to turn it to the light and see the luster still rolling across the surfaces, to take it to a professional grader and hear the words that tell you what you already suspected, that you are holding something extraordinary, something that connects you directly to a moment in American history that shaped the country you live in, something that was produced by human hands over 130 years ago and has survived everything that time could throw at it to arrive in your hands perfect and complete and worth more than most people will earn in a lifetime. That is the magic of rare coins. That is the reason that collectors spend their lives searching for these objects. That is the reason that the 1888 Morgan silver dollar sits at the top of our countdown today with a valuation of $370 million and a story that no amount of money can fully capture. Every coin we talked about today, from the 1921 all the way to this extraordinary 1888, represents something larger than its metal and its design, represents a moment in the American story that has been preserved against all odds and all time, waiting for the right person, with the right knowledge, and the right eyes, to recognize it for what it truly is. If you made it to the very end of this video, you are exactly that kind of person. You have the curiosity, the patience, and the passion that every great coin hunter needs, and we want you back here for the next one, because the treasures we will be talking about next time are going to be just as extraordinary, just as breathtaking, and just as potentially life-changing as everything you heard today. Thank you for watching Coin Hustle USA. Now go check those coin jars, because somewhere out there, a fortune is waiting.